Hey everyone, welcome back for another video. What we're going to be doing today is we are going to be going over our Week 2 NFL predictions for the 2024 NFL football season. We're going to go game by game, look at the matchup, try to break them down, and try to predict the outcome for the team. Also breaking down the money lines, the spreads, and the over-unders. Go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe. If you have any comments, drop them below, and I will also make sure to respond. So we're breaking down every game this week and also every game every week of the NFL and college football seasons. As I was saying, hit the like button and subscribe just to make sure that we can discuss them every single week. Now, week 1's not fully over. We still have the Monday night game coming up. So this is our early predictions video for week 2. The spreads here, they're probably going to change by the time that week 2 kicks off on Thursday. So we'll be coming up with a later video later this week touching on those new updated spreads. But as of right now, let's go ahead and get things started. So kicking things off Thursday, September 12th at 8:15 p.m. on Prime. Back to Thursday Night Prime Video, we have the 1-0 Buffalo Bills versus the 1-0 Miami Dolphins. This is another home game for the Dolphins. The Dolphins here, they're 1.5 point favorites, and the over-under is 50.5. So Vegas has this game being a virtual shootout and it being a very close, high-scoring game, and it's easy to see why. So Buffalo, they obviously lost a lot of pieces from last year's team. They lost Diggs. They lost a lot of defensive players. They had a lot of salary cap issues. But their offense actually played pretty solid this past weekend. So they did beat the Arizona Cardinals 34-28, a high-scoring game. The Bills used to have a good defense. That might not necessarily be the case this year. As I was saying, they did lose a lot of pieces, but they made up for it on offense. Josh Allen went off. He had 4 total touchdowns, went 18 of 23, 2 touchdowns, no picks. That's a pretty good stat right there. And rushing, he had 40 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's one of the most dynamic quarterbacks. He can run, he can throw. They still have playmakers. They have Cook at running back. They have Coleman. They have Curtis Samuel. They have Shakir. They have weapons there. It's just who's going to step up as the go-to target with Diggs being gone for the Dolphins. The Dolphins were down early to the Jacksonville Jaguars, down 17-7. They went off the fourth quarter. Their defense stepped up. Tua had that long touchdown to Hill. The Dolphins might have the best wide receiver core in the nation. Obviously, you have Tyreek Hill. He's a top 3 wideout, if not number 1. You have Waddle, Berrios at running back. You have Achin, Mostert, Wilson Jr. So many weapons here. They can run, they can throw. Their defense isn't bad, but when they needed a play, Jalen Phillips stepped up. They got the sacks. They got the pressures. This game's going to be a shootout, but I'm going to go with the Dolphins winning this one in a close one, 30-27, and covering that spread. The next matchup we're looking at, we're now moving on to Sunday, September 15th at 1 p.m. on Fox. We have the 1-0 New Orleans Saints visiting the 1-0 Dallas Cowboys. Dallas here at home, very tough to play the Cowboys at home. Cowboys are 6.5 point favorites. The over-under is 45.5. So when it came to the week 1 matchups here, Saints played really well. We did have them winning, beating the Panthers. Obviously, the Panthers just played awful, but Saints played extremely well on offense. The Saints do not have a bad roster by any means. Carr had a very efficient game, 19 of 23, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. Kamara went off. He was running the ball. He was catching the ball. Shaheed played very well. They do not have a bad defense by any means, and we obviously know that the Cowboys have one of the better rosters in all of football. Last year, they had a top 10 offense. They had a top 5 defense. They're going to have a top 10 in both of those categories this year. Very well-rounded team. You have Dak Prescott. He just got that massive contract. Didn't have his best game Sunday, but he did enough to win the game. They were playing against a top 10 defense in Cleveland. You had Elliott running the ball. You have CeeDee Lamb doing what he was doing. You have Brandon Cook stepped up, made some big catches. This is going to be a pretty fun game to watch. But obviously, the Cowboys have the better top-to-bottom roster. That's why they're the favorites, and they are very, very hard to beat in Jerry World. I have the Cowboys winning this one 27-20 and covering that spread. The next match we're moving on to at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 1-0 visiting the 1-0 Detroit Lions. The Lions at home are 6.5-point favorites here. The over-under is 48.5. Both teams are coming off of Week 1 wins. Obviously, Tampa Bay had a really solid win this past weekend. Baker Mayfield had one of the better seasons, a comeback player of the year last season. He picked up right where he left off this team. He went 24 of 30, 289 yards, 40 touchdowns. He was scrambling. He was making throws on the run. They had a really good run game out of Bucky Irving. And obviously, they have a very deep wide receiver core. They have Godwin, they have White, they have Evans, they have playmakers there. They do not have a bad defense by any means. They're very good at stuffing the run. So look for them to try to shut the run game and try to force the Lions to have to beat them vertically through the air. But the Lions are a very well-rounded team. Last season, obviously a playoff team. They have the Super Bowl in their sights this year. Their main goal is pick up where they left off last season, complete the run, make it to the Super Bowl. They finally got their playoff win last season. They'd been waiting for that for a very long time. A very talented roster. You have Goff at quarterback. You have Montgomery at running back. You have Gibbs. You have Williams. You have Laporta. You have St. Brown. They have weapons. They can beat you multiple ways. Passing the ball, running the ball. They have a solid defense. Like I was saying, a top 10 offense, top 10 defense. They are the favorites at home, and I'm going to go with Detroit to win this one in a close one, 27-24. I do not have them covering that spread, but I have them getting a solid win versus a playoff caliber team. Our next matchup at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 0-1 Indianapolis Colts versus the 0-1 Green Bay Packers. This game is in Green Bay. The Packers at home. They're going to be the underdogs here. They come in. The favorites are the Colts. Are 3-point favorites. The over-under 41.5. This game had the setup to be a really exciting game. Two young quarterbacks. But obviously Jordan Love went down. He's out for, I think, 4 to 6 weeks. So there's a lot of question marks at the quarterback position for the Packers. Is it going to be Willis? Is it going to be Zappy? We don't really know yet. Either one of them does not put this team in a position to succeed and competitively win this game. Are they capable? Yes. If they won, would I necessarily be surprised? No. Backup quarterbacks can come in, win games. Both of those quarterbacks have a lot of starts. But the Colts actually had a really solid game this past weekend. They did play competitively. We have Anthony Richardson coming in. He got hurt last season. We didn't get to see a lot of him last year, but he actually showed out pretty decent in Week 1. Not accurate in any way passing the ball. He was not accurate at Florida. I did not think he should have been a first-round pick when he came out in the draft, but a lot of people were very high on him due to his physical attributes. But he did have 200 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. But he was running the ball. He had 1 touchdown running, 56 yards on the ground. They have Jonathan Taylor. They have Pierce. They have Doolin. They have Pittman Jr. So there's weapons there. This is not a bad roster by any means. And obviously they have a healthy starting quarterback. Even with the Packers having Josh Jacobs and Reed and Dobbs, that's not enough, I don't think, with the backup quarterback in the game. That's going to lead to the Colts being able to take this one on the road. I have the Colts winning it 28-17 and covering the spread. The next matchup at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 0-0 New York Jets and the 0-1 Tennessee Titans. This game is in Nashville. Tennessee at home. They're going to be the underdogs. We have the Jets coming in here, 3.5-point favorites. The over-under 43.5. The reason I said 0-0 Jets is, as of me making this video, the Jets have not played the 49ers on Monday Night Football. So I'm going in kind of blind here because I don't know exactly how they're going to play Monday, but obviously 49ers, probably the best top-to-bottom roster in the NFL. So we'll see how that play out. But the 49ers are very talented. But we finally get to see Aaron Rodgers. We haven't seen him play in a long time. He got hurt first possession last season. So everyone's watching. How is Rodgers going to do? It's been a really long time, but we're glad to see him playing. This is going to be his second game in this system. They are on the road. They are the favorites as of right now. Jets have a very talented team. Obviously, you have Rodgers at the helm. If he's the Rodgers of old, he's going to light this up. This is an easy game for him to win, theoretically. And we know the Jets are going to have a top 10 defense. They're going to be loaded. If you have a defense, you should be able to keep any game close. And for Tennessee, they're obviously coming off of a loss in week 1. They had the win, but they completely laid an egg in the fourth quarter. Let the Bears beat them. Will Levis started out kind of hot, did not finish the game well by any means. He had 2 picks. They have Tony Pollard at running back. They have Calvin Ridley. They have Tyler Boyd. They have DeAndre Hopkins. They have weapons. It's just, can Will Levis cut down on those turnovers? The Jets are definitely going to push him with that really good defense, and they're going to get a lot of pressure with their defensive line. I have the Jets winning this one 24-14 and covering that spread. Our next matchup is also going to be a fun one at 1 p.m. on CBS. We have the San Francisco 49ers playing the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are 1-0. This game is in Minnesota, and the Vikings are going to be the underdogs. 49ers 5.5-point favorites, over under 45.5. Just like the Jets game, this game has not happened yet as of the time of me recording this video. So I don't know how the 49ers are going to look, but we do know they made the Super Bowl last year. They also have their sights on the Super Bowl. Probably the best top-to-bottom roster, a very deep offensive roster. Purdy, McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle. There's weapons everywhere, and an extremely talented defensive team as well. This team is hunting to get back to the Super Bowl. Standing in their way here, you have the Vikings. They lost their first-round pick, J.J. McCarthy. Sam Darnold started this past week. He actually had a really solid game. He had 208 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Jones had a really good game, almost 100 yards on the ground. They have Justin Jefferson. They have Jordan Addison. I said last week, with Sam Darnold, if he has a good game in week 1, he's going to have a bad game week 2, vice versa. That's just the way he is. He's Jekyll and Hyde. He played well in week 1, so I'm going to say he's probably due for a bad game, and he's going to be up against a top 3 defense. So I definitely think that favors the 49ers. I have the 49ers winning this one 27-17 and covering that spread. The next matchup at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 1-0 Seattle Seahawks versus the 1-0 New England Patriots. This game is in Massachusetts. You have the Seahawks on the road. They're the favorites, 3.5-point favorites, over under 39.5. Vegas has this being a very low-scoring game, and you see why when you look at what's happening. So obviously, both teams won in week 1. Denver versus the Seahawks in week 1. Seahawks, very solid game. Geno Smith, 18 of 25, 171 yards. I said they were going to keep the ball on the ground, control the clock, run downhill. Kenneth Walker, 103 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. They have Tyler Lockett. They have DK Metcalf. A very talented offensive roster as long as Geno Smith has a good game. And then when you look at the Patriots were not supposed to win week 1 versus the Cincinnati Bengals, but they pulled it off on the road. Props to them. They started Jacoby Brissett at the quarterback position. He's kind of been a journeyman. He does have a lot of starting experience, though. That's probably what they needed in Cincinnati. And they beat Joe Burrow up. So props to the Patriots for pulling up the upset. And what about Stevenson? He ran for 120 yards. They had a massive, surprising win. Can they do that back-to-back weeks as the underdog? I don't personally see it happening. I have Seattle winning this one on the road, 23-16, and covering the spread. This next game seems like it's going to be pretty interesting. So at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 0-1 New York Giants versus the 0-1 Washington Commanders. Washington at home, 3-point favorites, over under 41.5. Now, the reason I say that this is going to be pretty interesting is both of these teams lost in week 1, but you're going to see 2 different quarterbacks going in different directions. So kicking things off here with the Giants, you had Daniel Jones, who just completely played like garbage in week 1. He had 186 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. He was not running the ball well. Singletary did not have a good game on the ground. Really, they could get absolutely nothing going on offense in any way whatsoever versus a very depleted Vikings team. The only saving grace they had was Malik Neighbors looked very good at the wide receiver position. Just unfortunately for him, he doesn't have a better quarterback throwing in the ball. And then when you look at the Commanders, yes, they lost to the Buccaneers, but the Buccaneers are a very talented team, a playoff team last year. But Daniels had a really solid first game as a starter as a rookie. Went 17 of 24, 184 yards. No touchdowns, no picks, but he had 88 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. This is a team that can score some points. They had a horrible offensive line last season. They have a lot of new coaches. They have weapons. They have Brian Robinson Jr., they have Austin Eckler, and they have Zach Ertz. There's weapons there, and they have a quarterback who's showing massive upside. The Giants don't have that. Even though the Giants, they were the favorites last weekend, they weren't able to pull it off. They got curb stomped. I'm going to go with Washington winning this one at home. I have them winning it 28-20 and covering that spread. The next matchup at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 1-0 LA Chargers versus the 0-1 Carolina Panthers. The Chargers here, they're on the road. They're 5-point favorites, over under 39.5. With the Chargers, obviously, they have a new coach. They have Harbaugh. They won in week 1 versus a talented Raiders team. They won 22-10. Herbert did not have the best game stats-wise, but he really didn't have to. They were able to control the game on the ground with J.K. Dobbins. He ran for 135 yards and 1 touchdown. McConkey looked great at the wide receiver position. Justin Herbert, we know that he didn't have to throw too much this past weekend in week 1, but we know what he can do if it comes down to it. He's more than capable of getting into a shootout and throwing for 300 to 400 yards. That's not going to happen versus the Panthers. The Panthers only averaged like 13.5 points per game last season. I don't know, could they be worse this season? They lost this past weekend 10-47. They could not move the ball at all. Bryce Young had a horrible game, went 13 of 30, no touchdowns, 2 picks. They weren't able to run the ball. They weren't able to pass catch. They weren't able to block. They had a bad offensive line last season. They had a bad offensive line this season so far. So I'm actually kind of surprised that the spread's that low, but I'm going to go with the Chargers winning this one 28-14, covering the spread, and I have them handling this game rather easily. Then at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 0-1 Cleveland Browns versus the 0-1 Jacksonville Jaguars. This is the opening game in Jacksonville. The Jags at home, 2.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 42.5. So this past weekend, both teams lost. The Jaguars were on the road. They should have won, but they did give the game to Miami, and Miami gladly took it. They lost that one. Cleveland, they were the favorites at home versus the Cowboys. I did pick the Cowboys to go to Cleveland, beat them, so I was not surprised at all there. But do remember, Cleveland has a top 10 defense. Whenever you have a defense always travels. So they're going to bring that hard-hitting, hard-nosed defense, that great defensive line to Jacksonville to play a Jags team where their offensive line did not look the best versus the Dolphins. The Dolphins don't have a great defense. They have a serviceable defense, but they were able to get a lot of pressure on Trevor Lawrence. So theoretically, Cleveland should be able to get a lot more. Deshaun Watson played awful in week 1, but we really haven't seen him play much in 3 years, and he hasn't really shown a want to play. So we'll see if he's able to step his game up going into week 2. But Cleveland definitely has weapons. They have Ford, they have Watson himself, they have Njoku, they have Jared Jeudy, they have Amari Cooper. There's guys there. Watson just has to get them the ball. For Jacksonville, if they get the lead, they just have to make sure to hold on to the lead. The defense has to play better. The offensive line has to play better. Trevor Lawrence, you have to play better versus subpar defenses because Cleveland's going to get after you. Look for them to try to keep this game on the ground, try to control the clock. They are the favorites at home, but I'm going to go with the away team. I have Cleveland coming in here winning this one 20-17, so obviously the spread not getting covered. The next matchup at 1 p.m. on CBS, the 0-1 Raiders versus the 0-1 Baltimore Ravens. This game's in Baltimore, and the Ravens at home are going to be the favorites. They're 8.5-point favorites here. That's a really large spread for an NFL game. The over-under 42.5. Both teams need to get a win in week 1. The Raiders need to get a couple things sorted on offense. Gardner Minshew was the quarterback in week 1. He did not have a bad game, but they need to figure out a run game. Focus on the run game, get that right. But unfortunately for them, they're going to be playing a top 5 defense here. So the Ravens, a very talented team, a top 5 offense, a top 5 defense. They have Lamar Jackson. He needs to make up for some of those bad throws in the fourth quarter, but he's one of the most electrifying quarterbacks in the NFL. This team is loaded. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, Likely, Hill, Andrews, Aguilar. A lot of weapons there and an extremely talented defense. I have the Ravens winning this one at home, 30-17 and covering the spread. Then at 4:05 p.m. on Fox, the 0-1 LA Rams versus the 0-1 Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals at home are the underdogs. The Rams are 2.5-point favorites, over under 49.5. Both of these teams had very close losses, but for both teams, the offense played really well. That was not surprising. I did say that both teams would lose. I was not surprised by that. And I said the games would be shootouts, and they were shootouts. You have the Rams here. You have Stafford, had a great week 1 game, almost 320 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. He's got the weapons there. He has Williams at running back. He has Cooper Kupp. He has Nakua. They can beat you on the ground. They can beat you passing the ball. The Rams do leave a lot to be desired on defense. The Cardinals leave even more to be desired on defense, especially in getting some type of pass rush built up. They need to be able to generate pass rush. You have to try to force Stafford into making a mistake. If he has all day back there, the wideouts are too good. He's going to pick you apart, and they just don't have the defense. So they got to get better. They got to concentrate on that. They have playmakers. Kyler Murray actually had a really strong week 1 game. He is healthy this season. He was the leading rusher. Look for James Conner to get a lot more feeds here. They have the pass catchers, but I'm going to go with the Rams winning this one on the road, 27-20, and covering that spread. Our next game at 4:25 p.m. on CBS, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers 1-0 visiting the Denver Broncos at 0-1. Pittsburgh on the road, 3-point favorites, the over-under 37.5. Vegas has this one being a low-scoring game. We know the Pittsburgh Steelers are always going to have a top 10 defense under Mike Tomlin. As I mentioned before, defense always travels, so they're going to bring that aggressive defensive line all the way to Denver, playing a rookie quarterback. So you really see the potential there to where there could be a lot of mistakes in this game by Bo Nix. For the Steelers, Wilson was hurt. They started Justin Fields. I said they should have been starting Justin Fields anyways. He's the younger quarterback. To me, he's the more dynamic quarterback. They pulled the upset. They beat the Falcons in week 1. So Justin Fields is starting to build his resume up. If he keeps winning games, maybe he'll just cement himself as the full-time starter. He was 17 of 23, 156 yards, and he had 57 yards on the ground. They have Najee Harris. They have Pickens, Pruitt. They have some weapons there, and you have a dynamic quarterback that is mobile. For the Broncos, Bo Nix, he was named the starter, had an awful game, 26 of 42, 138 yards, 2 picks. He did lead them rushing 35 yards and 1 touchdown. I wouldn't put too much into that week 1 performance. I did pick him to lose. I did pick him to have a bad game. This is the guy Sean Payton wanted. He wanted an accurate, short-arm passer. He has him here. Sean Payton has to protect him better, has to dial up more plays that fit his system. But I'm going to go with the Steelers winning this one. They just have the better defense. I have the Steelers winning it 22-16 and covering the spread. The next matchup is one that should have been probably the most fun game of the weekend at 4:25 p.m. on CBS. The 0-1 Cincinnati Bengals versus the 1-0 Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City here, they are at home, and they're going to open up here as 6-point favorites. The over-under is 47. With this game, this is going to be somewhat of an interesting game. The reason that I'm saying that is Cincinnati completely laid an egg in week 1. They were huge favorites over the Patriots. They were at home. They lost. Burrow played awful, 21 of 29, 164 yards. They were not able to generate any type of rushing game at all. How'd you let the Patriots come into your house and beat you? Cincinnati started out last season really bad. Looks like they're starting out really bad this season also. They should have not let the Patriots beat them. That's a bad way to start, but it is week 1. You don't want to look too much into it. We know Joe Burrow is one of the few quarterbacks who has beaten Mahomes before. He's more than capable of pulling this off, but he'll have to do it on the road versus a top 3 defense as well as an offense that is loaded at the skilled positions. You have Mahomes, you have Pacheco, Worthy, you have Rice, you have Kelsey, you have Watson, you have Smith-Schuster. There's weapons there, and they have the defense, and they're at home. And Cincinnati just really didn't build a lot of confidence after that Week 1 performance. I had the Chiefs winning this one 23-16, just barely covering that spread as of right now. But that spread's probably going to come down as we get closer to game day. In our final game on Sunday, 8:20 p.m. on NBC, an exciting game with two young quarterbacks. At 8:20 p.m., the Chicago Bears at 1-0 on the road versus the Houston Texans, also 1-0. This game is in Houston, and the Texans 6.5-point favorites here. The over-under 45.5. Both teams won in Week 1. Chicago Bears, I think Tennessee was favored, but I had Chicago winning either way in Week 1. I had Caleb Williams doing just enough to get the win. They have playmakers. They have Swift. They have Caleb Williams. They have DJ Moore. They have Keenan Allen. They have Rome Odunze, the first-round pick out of Washington. The weapons are there. Caleb Williams did not have a good game. He went 14 of 29, 93 yards. It's pretty bad passing-wise. He was able to get a couple rushes there. He didn't have any picks. He's going to have to play better Week 2. He knows that. This is going to be a really fun game. And when you look at the Texans, they also won. They beat the Colts. I did have them beating the Colts. Stroud, great game. 24 of 32, 234 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Joe Mixon, what a good performance at running back. 30 carries, 159 yards, 1 touchdown. They have Nico Collins. They have Diggs. This is one of the better offensive rosters in the NFL. They have the quarterback. They have the running back. They have 2 proven Pro Bowl wide receivers. They can do it. They have a defense that can get just enough stops to get them the win. They are the favorites here on the road. I have them winning this one 23-17 and not covering the spread, but still getting a win, and I have Caleb Williams doing a lot better in Week 2. And the final game for Week 2, Monday, September 16th at 8:15 p.m. on ESPN, the 0-1 Atlanta Falcons versus the 1-0 Philadelphia Eagles. This game is in Philly. The Eagles 4.5-point favorites. The over-under 48.5. A pretty high-scoring game for the Falcons. They should have won Week 1. They looked awful. Kirk Cousins did not play well. 16-26, 155 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. But I'll give him some saving grace here because he hasn't played basically since last season. Did not play much in the preseason at all. He was pretty rusty. It's a new team, new scheme. You would expect for him to play and look better in Week 2. The Falcons, good defense, loaded offensive roster. They have Bijan Robinson. They have Algiers. They have Ray J. McLeod. They have Kyle Pitts. You have London. The weapons are there. Get the guys the ball. Don't force the ball too much. You have the defense. You have the playmakers. Play smart. Play like the veteran quarterback you are, or we're going to be seeing Penix Jr. soon. For the Eagles, they got the win versus the Packers, but it was close because technically, if Love doesn't get hurt, they might lose that one. They finished last year awful, had a really bad second half. You don't want that to happen first half of this season. This is a very talented roster. You could potentially make a run at the Super Bowl, but you need to play the way that your team is capable of playing, like when you made the Super Bowl 2 seasons ago. You have Jalen Hurts, did not have a good game. He put up stats, but he also made a lot of mistakes. You have Saquon Barkley at the running back position. You're loaded at wide receiver and the skilled positions. You have A.J. Brown. You have Smith. You have Goddard. The weapons are there. Just like Kirk Cousins, don't make the mistakes. The Eagles are at home. Look for them to get to 2-0. And for the Falcons to play better. But I have the Eagles winning 27-23, but not covering the spread as of right now. So that's our breakdown and predictions for our Week 2 for the NFL slate of games. Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. If you have any comments, drop them below and I will respond. Thank you.